Hi, I'm Melanie Carter.
And I'm Dominique Bergevin. Welcome to Trade Talk. Today we're taking a look at the North American Free Trade Agreement, commonly known as NAFTA. It's been more than 20 years since Canada, Mexico, and the USA opened their borders. And today we're asking, has it worked?
Or more to the point, has it helped Canadian exporters? We're going to meet someone who says NAFTA has been good for business. But first, a few fast facts to remind us what was at stake when the deal was done. NAFTA came into effect on January 1st, 1994, creating the largest free trade zone in the world. Almost 400 million people, representing a quarter of the world's economy, were affected by the agreement. In Canada, 1 in 5 jobs were impacted by the deal. And since 1994, total merchandise trade between Canada and the US has more than doubled. And with Mexico, it's increased 7 times.
So it appears that NAFTA has been good for Canadian exporters. But it's a complicated process, and exporters can often find themselves bogged down in rules and regulations. Recently, I had a chance to sit down with Jason Myers, the President and CEO of the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters Association. And I asked him, 20 years after the deal was signed, what has NAFTA done for Canadian exporters? What are the steps for a company to take advantage of NAFTA, which is a very complex agreement for any company to understand? Really?
Sure, you've got lots and lots of rules of origin here, and for any company it's important to understand what the rule of origin is, what the value components of your product or your service have to be in order to provide that into the NAFTA marketplace, in order, particularly in the provision of products, in order to realize the tariff elimination that came with the agreement.
Are there any risks of not properly going through this certification process, but yet still wanting to benefit from the tariff reduction?
Well, you unless you go through the certification process, and in those areas where tariffs still do apply, you just simply won't be able to benefit from the tariff, the elimination of tariffs. So it's important for companies that do want the tariff eliminated on their products to go through that certification process. And that probably, for many Canadian exporters right now, applies probably more in Mexico than it does in the United States. Tariffs are relatively higher in Mexico, outside of the rules of origin that are defined by
Jason,
NAFTA.
could you give us a specific example of a company that has gone through the process of NAFTA and has successfully been able to take advantage of those tariff reductions?
One of my favorite stories is E.H. Price, based in Winnipeg. They manufacture air conditioning and heating systems for the commercial real estate market. And they have expanded very rapidly in the U.S. market. They've done that by improving customer services. And so NAFTA, I think, has been beneficial for them, not only in terms of being able to eliminate the tariffs on exports into the U.S. from Canada, but also making it easier for them to move their business personnel, their service personnel between Canada and the United States. It's made it easier in terms of some of that equipment is going into government procurement and government infrastructure at the federal level, and it's made it easier to sell into that market. And it's for a company like that is also expanding and making investments in the United States. It's also given them investment protection in that market.
On a concluding thought, what is the future of NAFTA 20 years from now? What will it look like?
How do we make sure that we can move products and people across the border easily, if we can secure know that those products and the people are secure? That's certainly an issue. How can we do a better job in harmonizing or cooperating in terms of regulatory development? Those are also major issues. How can we do a better job in lowering other protective barriers that we see, like Buy American, for instance, and other procurement markets? So these are areas that are not covered right now by the NAFTA agreement, but I think where we need to do a better job, and where, frankly, a lot of Canadian exporters, given the nature of the export business to international business today, which is all about moving ideas and people as well as products and services, we need to update NAFTA, or we need to update the rules with our NAFTA partners to really to mirror the realities of 21st century business.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay, thanks very much.
Every day, Canada does about $2 billion worth of trade with the U.S. So it's no surprise that when we say NAFTA, people think of trade across the 49th parallel. But Mexico is also an important partner. Export Development Canada has experts located in Mexico and in Canada that play an important role in helping Canadian business expand to the Mexican market.
Jorge Rave is one of these experts, regional manager for Mexico in EDC's International Business Development team. I recently had a chance to ask him what sectors are benefiting from the NAFTA agreement. Can you narrow that down a bit for us and speak to what sectors have most benefited from the NAFTA agreement?
The main four sectors that have benefited from NAFTA from a Canadian perspective are oil and gas, mining, automotive, and aerospace. Mexico has become the 8th largest producer of cars in the world, and it's thanks to the Canadian story, the Canadian footprint in the sector, bringing technology, and also because Mexico offers low-cost skilled labor and a very strategic location.
So does NAFTA treat all of those different entry strategies differently?
The moment you enter and you invest in the Mexican market, you receive national treatment. So you will be treated just as any Mexican company. The advantage is that you really need to understand the market because it's a different, different way of doing business, and it's a different culture when it comes to social relations that are very important in a country like Mexico.
And if you had to give 3 pieces of advice for companies that want to take advantage of NAFTA agreement, what would those be? Know
your market, that's the first one. The second one would be there are opportunities for Canadian companies across all the sectors in Mexico, but I would mention that those sectors that we mentioned before, oil and gas, mining, aerospace, automotive, are still key. I would add to those ICT, telecommunications and information and technology, and also infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Jorge.
My pleasure.
So, as Jorge mentioned, NAFTA has benefited certain sectors more than others.
Yes, indeed. Over time, NAFTA has served us so well that in certain sectors, the tariffs have been greatly reduced or even in some cases completely eliminated.
And so today, Canadian companies can benefit from NAFTA without actually having to go through all of the paperwork all the time. That's the benefit of 20 years of history.
Exactly.
And NAFTA has actually also served as a model to the Canadian government in going forward and negotiating other free trade agreements with other markets, thereby opening these borders for Canadian exporters.
Exactly. This includes the very ambitious CETA, that's the trade agreement that's currently being negotiated between Canada and the EU. And in fact, CETA will be the next topic for the next Trade Talk episode. Before we sign off, don't forget that EDC offers a wealth of information on exporting. To get a copy of our white paper on how to get the most from free trade agreements, go to edc.ca/free trade. Thanks for watching. I'm Melanie Carter.
And I'm Dominique Bergevin. Until next time, keep talking trade.